Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Executive Table Talk powered by Work It Daily. My name is JT O'Donnell. I'm the founder and CEO of Work It Daily and also the host of the show today. I'm really excited to talk about building international markets. I think given all the craziness of the last several years, globalization is taking on all new shapes and forms. And I'm very, very lucky to have one of our incredible WID executive experts, Steve Barriault, with me today. So I want to bring him straight up here now. Hello, Steve.
Hi, how are you?
Good. I'm excited to talk about this. But before we do, give everybody a little bit of a backstory. Tell us the 30-second summary of your career journey and how you got to this place where you do so much work in international markets.
Sure. So basically, just from my childhood, I've always been interested by the international field. Like I told my parents I would be traveling the world. And then later on, when I went to college and, I did that experience, like basically I determined that not only that, I actually like to help people and basically present in front of people. So sales kind of came naturally to me, but at the same time, I had the leg in sciences and software. So that's how I started. 20 years experience doing sales, technical marketing, also field engineering, frankly. So all things that are related. And like as I grew, that in these positions, then eventually I had to expand teams. So then I became also a mentor and a manager and a leader of men, and try to bring them into my own little dream, and so we can have fun together.
I love it. I love it. That's amazing. So it's funny because this is part one, and you have it titled as Building International Markets. And I never, is it Sun Tse? Am I saying that correctly? Sun Tse.
Yeah, Sun Tzu. So
Okay.
it's it's
because
more
you are
French.
fluent. I should mention that. How many languages are you fluent in?
Fluent 3. Japanese is more of a work in progress. I mean, I can hold my own. Korean, battlefield Korean, I would say. Like, if you want me to order you good food in Seoul, I should be able to manage that.
I love it. That's fantastic. All right. Well, tell us what we're going to talk about today.
So basically, I just thought about like having some fun with some historical references, because I know that maybe that people are like, oh, well, it's a little bit dry. Obviously, Sun Tzu, Bing Fa, the Art of War by Sun Tzu, is one of the classics that in Asia and especially in China, obviously. So I thought, how about I actually try to match some of Sun Tzu's saying to some of the experiences that I had, and like some of the lessons that I learned along my 20-year journey in sales and engineering, and see if I can make it work. So this time around, since I had a lot of things to say, I said, okay, like let's split it in two. So those are the 4 topics I would like to cover today, and then hopefully we can do that again in September and cover the last 2 topics.
So you're going to show that this book is truly a classic, right? You're going to validate the timelessness of this book, which I think is super cool. All right. So let's start with number 1, doing your homework.
Yeah. So this is something. It's my number 1 proverb in Chinese. It's like 知己知彼，百战百胜. It means literally, if you know yourself, you know your enemy. 100 battles, 100 victories. Now, obviously, it's not always working, but this is one of the major thing about Sun Tzu. And just to your point, people in business in Asia, they do know Sun Tzu. They read it as a matter of fact. I mean, obviously, it's not saying anything about exchange rates or anything like that, but for the how to think about business, that's one of kind of the required readings. So, like if you go there in Asia, you would do well to just take a look at the book and read the English version so that you know what they're talking about. Now, for doing your homework, I mean, this is essentially what that proverb says, is that before you actually commit to something, do your homework. In my case, when I go somewhere for the first time, which I still do, like I'm due to go to Riga in Latvia in the future, I try to, at the very least, to understand a little bit about the culture and know how to at least say thank you in the local language. I mean, it may seem stupid, but you know what? it's bringing you a lot of smile, very, very easy smiles. It's a great way to break the ice. But obviously, if you're going to conduct business in that market, like you want to inform yourself about the market status, what kind of industries you have there. So in my case, in Asia, I was representing a company that was selling software testing tools. Now, it could be used in different embedded software. If you don't know what embedded software is, it's essentially software that you don't see. It's not on a computer. It could be in a plane, in a car, medical devices. Very often can kill you, so you do want things to be tested. But it could also be like display panels, those kind of things. So depending on the countries that you're going to, for example, in Asia, you would have a different percentage of the market that could be interested in your solution, and it will vary from country to country. So, for example, if you go to Japan, yeah, like automotive is obviously going to be very interesting. Robotics will be also very interesting. But some things, say, for example, something like defense, well, a lot of the defense contracts are actually being doled out to the American companies, which is different from South Korea. South Korea tends to have a much larger native defense industry, for that matter. So, or China being the other. Although China, there are limitations what you can do there, obviously. So you need to be careful about that. That's part also of the local challenges. Legal, business, cultural. How do you, for example, the first time that you meet a Korean, how are you going to go with them to eat? Like, people are again, like that's a detail, but that's a detail that they really value. So, for example, if you go to Seoul and you want to give somebody a drink, so first of all, you don't serve your own drink, right? So you don't put your glass there and serve drink to yourself. Somebody has to do it for you. And the way that they do that is that they put their hand on either here on your wrist or at the very bottom of the bottle. And that's because, that's what they explained to me, in the past, their garbs were very long. So they didn't want a piece of fabric to be in your alcohol. So it's a mark of respect. So if you do this and they are not expecting it, like, you're definitely going to earn a few smiles at the very least.
I love it. I love it. Let me ask you, I mean, Google is readily available with information like this.
Yeah.
How do we confirm that it's accurate?
That is a very, very good question. And here's, like, I wish that in school, people get more training about this, because it's not all the internet resources that are born equal. So, everybody can look good, like a website can look extremely good and yet have things that are entirely false. In general, I would say for something like this, for not too controversial a topic, something as easy as Wikipedia could actually be useful. There's also a few travel websites that would actually give you the right information as well. But you still need to, like, make a judgment call about whether what you have in front of you is actually legit or not. Mm-hmm. On the business side, I would say that it comes a lot with reading the newspaper. I know it's old style, right? But yeah, sure. You want to read a few newspaper. What is going on right mm-hmm. now, right there? Like, it's important information. Government agencies can also provide fairly accurate statistics, some more than others, obviously. So, yeah, but we need to make a judgment call, to your point. Definitely.
So maybe not just take the first thing that comes along, but maybe research several. I love it.
Absolutely.
Love it. All right, let's talk about getting the direct and indirect mix right.
Exactly. So one of the things that you can do in sales is that you could actually hire a reseller or distributor to do the sales for you. Okay. And there are different ways of doing this. And I heard from some people that, in some countries, you absolutely need to have a reseller or a distributor. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Nobody is going to want to speak with you. I disagree. It's not matching my experience, but it can be at times a good option. So one of the things, like personally, like I feel, is that if your market is a secondary market, maybe that's somewhere that you want to say, hey, for the moment, I don't have a lot of bandwidth. I don't have the opportunity to actually appoint somebody for that particular location. So a partner may actually make a lot of sense, even like an exclusive partner. But if you do an exclusive partnership, you do need to have some kind of incentive built in that is going to encourage that partner to play its part, and not just simply either sit on their butt and wait for you to do everything, or to send them leads, or saying, well, eventually it will be done. Eventually it will be done. Eventually it will be done. Like I got through that experience. I can tell you it's no fun. So, and it's not an and or choice either. So, I can tell you, for example, that I got good success in Japan with a mix of direct representation and also partnerships. Like it works. I can tell you the same in China. South Korea had an excellent experience with a sole distributorship there. So it really depends on the situation. It's really tricky at times, especially in Asia.
And when you think about, I like that you said you don't have to find somebody to represent you in there, that you could potentially do it yourself.
Yes.
What are the downsides? Like, let's say you do start with somebody there, right? So you go find a reseller there and they establish you. Are you ever going to break free from that and be able to do it independently? Is that a stepping stone, or is that pretty much a decision that you can't reel back from?
No, you can. And in fact, many people do. And the reseller organizations there expect that there's a certain churn that is going to happen, either because these companies are being acquired or they grow out of that mode of resellership. But at the same time, it's actually, based on my experience, really important to make sure that your decision is pragmatic and not hubris, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe that you still want them around, just not for the whole territory. That could actually happen, and I've been negotiating that kind of smooth transition, and it actually turned out pretty good for everybody that was involved, rather than just, well, cut them loose and then suddenly, guess what? They become a competitor instead of being an ally. So right. It's also dependent on the type of partners that you can find. So I'm not going to name any specifics here, obviously, but in one territory, for example, I could never really find a partner that I could say, yes, I can manage them and that we're going to go somewhere with them. And in that case, it was like the investment that you had to make in order to build an office from scratch was actually quite reasonable. And in fact, a lot of the business that we had internationally, like from Europe and the US, had that component in that territory. So in that case, hey, go ahead and hire people directly, because all the partners that we had there were just poaching stuff that we were generating. Like right. They need to be bringing something to the table. That's for sure.
Totally get it. Makes sense. Great points. Which also makes me think, even if you're using a reseller, what I'm hearing is you still got to pay attention, though, right? You've Absolutely. Got to keep an eye, like you said. You don't know what's going on. You've got to have the right checks and balances. Very interesting. Which leads to recruiting judiciously. Let's talk about this.
Yeah. So essentially, when I'm recruiting, field or sales or partners, it doesn't matter. What I'm looking for is somebody that is going to be able to help you. Obviously, result-oriented, client-focused, because unfortunately in sales, there are far too many people that are just in for a quick buck signing, and then after that, they leave. They leave the company, and then they leave you in trouble. You cannot have something that is sustainable over the medium to long term with that kind of individual, right? Obviously, I've been in companies more established. I've also been in companies that were more in a startup mode. Uh, Especially for these, you do need a self-starter. So if you have somebody that you recruit has been accustomed to have a slide deck provided to them, and basically the machine is working super nice, and all you have to do is to push papers and do a certain limited number of things, and sales will happen. Well, guess what? It's not going to happen in many cases because these things need to be established. So you need somebody hungry, but you also need somebody that is self-starter and also that is resourceful. You know, okay, I'm the one that is going to make it happen.
Got it.
That's what you need. Absolutely.
Yeah, I totally see that point. And I think that is like, having been in recruiting for many years myself, and I know you've done it too, really getting at the core of someone's intrinsic motivation is the key, right? Like you've got to be able to make sure there's that fire in there, that they are going to be self-driven to do all of that. And on top of that, you're now managing them remotely too, right? So, being able to, you can't motivate somebody from halfway around the world, right? Like they need to be self-motivated. Can you give maybe an example or two of traits you've seen in the interview or things they've done that have made you realize they're not going to be the one for the job?
Well, yes. So one of the things that is big turn off for me because I saw people that exhibited this trait to fail lamentably is a self-fulfilled overconfidence. It's like, I've been doing that, no problem, I got you covered. Like each time that I heard that, whether it's from a partner or a prospective employee, in one case, it was like somebody assigned to me, frankly, it was not my choice. And I had basically that type of individual being placed under me and say like, okay, like you're going to accept that. Well, he failed, and big time, because like it's sure he thinks in his own bubble that everything will be hunky-dory, and it was not.
Yeah.
And not only it's going to rub salt into the eyes of your clients, it's also going to rub a bunch of salt into everybody's eyes in your company. So you want to take a hit at the morale and your revenue, go ahead and hire that type of individual. Everybody, somebody that is entirely about self, like, yeah, like I'm so great. You do need to have a good human being. Like, it's not because you're in sales and you have fire in your belly that you should be like, and pardon my French here, an asshole. You should not. Period. Uh, and also, one of the other thing is that and this is a bit more controversial, but the best people that can sell something to me are the people that have a passion for what that something is. Like, if what you're trying to sell is just a trinket for you, then it's not going to communicate passion. It's not going to communicate how important that thing is, whether it's a service or a product, it doesn't matter. If it's just like meh, then you're going to have a meh reaction from the client.
Yeah.
That's simple.
Yeah. Totally get it. Great advice. All right, let's talk about rewarding.
Yep. So this is probably the trickiest thing to get right because it's money, and then money is a critical topic. And it's very easy to get it wrong. So, for example, in India, you have a lot of projects that are landing there from all over the world. So, what that means is that very often, if you start something in India from a sales or technical sales perspective, you will end up probably having that purchase to be done somewhere else. That happens very often because suddenly it's like, oh, well, we forgot to tell you, but the budget is really in the US. And there will be somebody in the US that will need to make that sale happen. But if this is a recurring story and then you're being asked to deliver in India because it's your territory and you're not receiving any compensation for that in form of quota, then you're really putting people in a big moral dilemma because they can either do what is right for the company or what is right for themselves. And each time that you have those kind of discrepancy, like emerging, I mean, folks, it's easy. They are going to choose themselves because they have potentially a family to take care of, and like you would be doing the same if you were them. But you have other countries where this is not a problem. Like, for example, Japan. Most of the time, the deal will happen in Japan, and then it's relatively self-contained. So you do want to structure your incentives to deny people free rides. That's a given. Like you need to be able to show that you're bringing value to certain deals, but you also want at the same time to avoid putting employees or partners in front of dilemmas of that kind, because then the result is not going to be in your favor.
It's really interesting that you say this. So I just had an experience recently with a software provider, and I won't name names. And the software is up for a renewal. And I was amazed at how many people are trying to get involved in the sale.
Yep.
Like I can feel it as the customer.
Absolutely.
That there are a whole bunch of people trying to get their name tied to the renewal. And so being in recruiting, I understand they're all trying to get a cut, right? They're all trying to get it onto their numbers. And given what's happening in the labor market right now, I'm sure it's also for self-preservation. But it is such a turnoff. It really, I can't describe it. Like it just feels so disingenuous. And so I share that because I think that really proves your point that if you don't have it clear cut on how rewards are done, everyone's trying to game the system, right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, and this is basically organizations will always feel, well, how do I prevent people from gaming the system? And it's warranted, right? You should not be rewarded on something you have nothing to do with. Perfect. On the same token, be careful about the opposite problem, which is, well, actually, they had something to do with it, but now you made yourself a fast rule that actually puts people in front of impossible to choose dilemma. Like, oh, well, like I'm giving you a salary, so of course you're going to be taking care of that customer in India because I give you a salary. But at the same time, please make your numbers. Ooh, okay. Well, that now, I don't know for you, but most of people that are working these days, do they have an infinite number of hours that they can work in a day? I think that the hard limit is 24 hours. That's what I've been told. So, it's and usually between people of good faith, you can actually find accommodations when something like this happens. If you have people, again, like recruiting, right? If you have people that it's always about me and they are unable to get to that gentleman or gentle lady agreement zone, that's also a red flag right there, because you will have things that are just not clear cut sometimes, and you will have to discuss and then come to an agreement. That has happened to me many, many times. And then it's very possible, except when there's like, again, the quote unquote asshole that is, it's all about me.
Yep.
You don't want this guy in your team or that woman.
Yep. No, true. And I've seen both, by the way. That the person that looks out for themselves, there's gender equality there. So I've seen both. I love it. This has been super helpful. Part one's been excellent, folks. If you want to connect with Steve, check out, he's put his LinkedIn profile right here. Go find him right now. Find and follow him on LinkedIn. Also send him a connection request. Tell him you saw him here on Executive Table Talk, ETT. But I do want to take a few questions from the audience, Steve. So let me go bring those up here. And folks, if you have questions, now's the time to post them. I'm going to bring us back up here, and I'll put his contact information up again, folks. We've got one from fellow executive Michael Willis. I love this one. He says, actually, it's right here. In markets notoriously difficult to penetrate, how can your experiences, Steve, challenge the notion that partnerships is only viable entry strategy? What can solo endeavors do to still yield success?
Well, my experience is specifically about Japan. At the beginning, like the case I had was that we had a potentially very well an organization a reseller organization that was quite successful before with other products. But the thing is that from my point of view, they kind of calcified at that point in time when they came on board. And unfortunately, like for many years, they didn't really do much, right? But we're always told, oh, don't worry, like this is Japan, takes a long time, and like Guanxi is everything, like the and entries into those kind of organizations just going to carry the day. Sorry, not true. It certainly didn't work for us. Now, I did find somebody, one of my good friends now, his name is Takahiro, that found his way to me, and then I convinced management to actually give him a job, and said, like, look, let me open this thing for you, and then try with Takahiro. And you know what? He was successful. I mean, it took some time. Obviously, it's difficult. It's the Japanese market is not for the faint of heart, but he was able to make progress in part because, like he was, and this is, obviously it's more of a startup thing. One of the things that the Japanese companies really want from you is that in their time of need, to support them, they would really like to be able to pick up the phone and speak in Japanese at their own leisure. And you know what? That could be done through a partner. It can also be done through a direct employee, even if there's only one. And, I can tell you, like, yeah, sure. Like we were able to make progress. It would have been different if I had to sell remotely all the time. Maybe that I can land a few deals, but in my opinion, it's not necessarily about the sale. It's more like about the kind of support that you can do if you sell there, because this is when they really need your help.
I love it. I love it. Okay. I want to take one more question. And this one is also from Michael, just because I love it and I want the answer. I'm going to put you on the spot. He's saying 20 years of experience is a testament to resilience in global markets. I would agree with him on this. Can you elaborate on a situation where persistence and determination in an unfamiliar market ultimately resulted in a triumph? Tell us your best story around that.
Oh, I don't know if it's my best story, but it's a story. It's and my friend Kyung-il will either applaud me or not for putting him under the bus. But it was one of my first deals in South Korea. So I arrived there, don't know much, and we had a deal with a aerospace company there, and there was two deals, right? A small deal and a big deal, and we were late because we were really new to the market. And with my friend Kyung-il, it's like, okay, how do you work with South Koreans? I mean, I never had that experience. It was a little bit tough at the beginning. He became one of my great friends, like once he figured out that I could eat anything that he could eat. But that's besides the point. But you can query me on LinkedIn if you want to have more details, but I'm not sure that you want. On the sales side, so this is what happened. It's like I spent hours on end trying to figure out their project with Kyung-il. And then eventually we figured out, and then the company was kind of nice, like, okay, here's a consolation prize. You're getting the small contract, and the big contract is going to your competitor. Here's the thing, though. 1 year later, guess what happened? Bigger contract. We made sure that this small contract was successful because I was like, it's not true that my first contract in South Korea is going to be a failure. So I invested the time. I made sure that these folks had everything that they needed in order to be successful. So when that big, huge contract came 1 year later, it just came to us. It just came to us because, it's like, who actually showed up and visited them in the south of South Korea? Not my competitor, me, with my local partner. So that's another thing that we will see like next month, right? So if you get to invite me again, but like I have a few other topics, and that's one of them. It's like you really want to take care of your client, and then internationally that means going there and showing the flag. You're on mute, I think.
I am. It wouldn't be a party if I didn't get stuck on mute. I love that you really reinforce the under promise, over deliver aspect of that, right? Like better
Yeah.
to get the smaller contract and nail it than to go for the big one and blow it, great stuff. And yes, you're coming back on because you've got to do part 2. I think it's great. I just want to remind everyone that Steve can be found on LinkedIn. So please go, there's his LinkedIn profile. Better yet, just go search him right now, find and follow him, or send him a connection request. Tell him you saw him here on Executive Table Talk. Steve, this has been an amazing, amazing discussion. Thank you. I love this. I love hearing from you. I think your stories are amazing. Folks, Steve has unbelievable content. He does so much too on the concept of international travel. So if this is intriguing to you, you really should be following him. You should see his YouTube content. It's phenomenal. So please go find and follow him. And we will see you next month. We just got to nail down a time, but you're coming back to do part 2. Thank you for this. I really appreciate it. Everyone, have a great rest of your week. Thank you for dialing into Executive Table Talk. Remember, you can watch all of these on repeat over on our YouTube channel, Work It Daily. So head on over to YouTube, watch all of our Executive Table Talks. And until next time, remember what I tell you. If you want to win, you've got to work it daily. Good luck and go get them.
Thank you.